Good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining us for our Minority Women Lead kickoff event. My name is Pat Fong Kushida, and I'm the President and CEO of the California Asian Pacific Chamber of Commerce. You know, last year at this time, it was such a different setting. We were in Jose, California, and I could feel the energy in the room, and I could feel the compassion in the room, and I could feel a bunch of women that were motivated and excited to be there. And this is a little different this year, but I'm going to tell you, we've put a lot of thought, we put a lot of hard work into this event, and we're hoping it's going to be just as impactful and just as meaningful as last year's event. So thank you all for joining us. We truly appreciate you being here during these unprecedented times. And on behalf of our chamber and our event partners at the Asian Pacific Islander American Chamber of Commerce and Entrepreneurship and the Minority Business Development Agency, we are thrilled to have you here today at our kickoff month-long celebration of professional women of color. And thank you, Shalene, for being here. She is the President and CEO of ACE, and so she will also be my co-host and my co-host MC for today. So as a reminder, the event program has been sent to everyone via chat. So please, I encourage you guys to take a look at that. We started this event 3 years ago to provide a platform to elevate the voices of influential women of color and to inspire the next generation of women leaders. As the largest ethnic chamber of California, here in California, in a majority minority state, we are committed to shining a spotlight on those voices and helping advance opportunities for our small businesses and communities of color. This year, as you know, has been an especially challenging time for all of us, but I think it's these times of uncertainty and change that make it more important than ever for us to support and uplift one another. I'm inspired when I hear stories about women of color, such as many of our speakers throughout the month, stepping up to lead their communities and companies. Many are on the front lines helping us through this pandemic, while others are advocating for systematic change, pushing for diversity and inclusion. We are here today to celebrate all of these amazing women of color and our advocates and allies. Throughout the month, we will be featuring stories of inspirational women on our website, minoritywomenlead.com. And for those of you on social media, you can engage with our company and our campaign and post your stories by using the hashtag MinorityWomenLead. So let's get started. And before we do, I'd like to take a moment to thank our sponsors. Our event sponsors are Wells Fargo and Southwest. Our silver sponsors are Coca-Cola, Comcast, Postmates, and Union Bank. Our bronze sponsors, Lyft, Siemens Mobility Incorporated. And now I'd like to thank Southwest Airlines and give a special recognition to them. At the end of our 11 o'clock panel discussion, we will be selecting a winner to receive one round trip ticket anywhere in the continental US. I know people aren't traveling these days, but these passes will be valid until at least next March. The winner will be selected at random from our list of registered attendees and must be present when the winner is announced. Now I am truly honored to introduce a longtime friend and an amazing, impactful woman of color in her own right, Ms. Shalene Tong, President and CEO at the National Asian Pacific Islander American Chamber of Commerce and Entrepreneurship. Ladies and gentlemen, Ms. Shalene Tong.
Pat, thank you very much for the kind introduction. It is good to be with everyone here virtually as we celebrate the achievement of Asian Pacific American women in our country. These are strange and trying times for all of us. I know for many of you, your business are struggling as we work to adapt during the pandemic. Even in times of trouble, I have seen the resilience of entrepreneurs of our country and people coming alongside each other to help. The beauty of community in our country is being demonstrated daily. My team at the National ACE is here, and we are so proud to be a partner with Cal Asian Chamber. If you need help with finding, applying for federal funding, one-on-one counseling, on how to pivot your business model or technology support to adapt to 2020's new demands, please let us know. We are here to help you out. We hope this conference will allow each of you to connect virtually to learn from leading experts and hear stories that will inspire you to think differently for your business. We are grateful for all of your partners and sponsors at this event. And again, if you need advice during this time, please use National AIDS as a resources, and we can connect you with the help you need. We are strong when we work together. Thank you. Now, I would like to take this opportunity to introduce Congresswoman Judy Chu. She is truly my hero. And Congresswoman Judy Chu was elected to the U.S. House of Representatives in 2009, making her the first Chinese American woman elected to Congress in history. Today, she served on the powerful House Ways and Means Committee and the House Small Business Committee. She is an advocate for women's rights, civil and voting rights, and small business. Please join us to welcome Congresswoman Judy Chu.
Thank you, Chi-Ling. It's so great to be here today, even virtually, with so many amazing minority women small business owners. I want to particularly thank the California Asian Pacific Chamber of Commerce and the National Asian Pacific Islander American Chamber of Commerce, or National ACE, for their leadership in hosting this event. As the chair of both the Congressional Asian Pacific American Caucus and the House Small Business Subcommittee on Oversight, it has been a priority of mine to ensure that all entrepreneurs, especially women and entrepreneurs of color, who face some of the most obstacles, have the support they need from the federal government. This has been a difficult year for everyone in our country, but it has been particularly difficult for minority-owned small businesses who are among the first to suffer economic impacts from the COVID-19 pandemic. Prior to the coronavirus pandemic, minority-owned firms contributed over $1.4 trillion to the economy, employing over 7 million people. But the pandemic has brought that all to a halt, and small business owners are paying some of the heaviest prices. This was especially true for Asian-owned businesses who were the canary in the coal mine and were often the first to close their doors in the weeks before states and cities issued mandatory shutdown orders. In fact, Asian-owned businesses saw sharp declines in businesses as early as January due to stigma and misinformation that they were more likely to have the coronavirus. For instance, in January, a fraudulent letter purporting to be from public health organizations like the World Health Organization and Centers for Disease Control and Prevention claimed that there was an outbreak of coronavirus in Carson, California, and specifically named Asian-owned restaurants and grocery stores to avoid. And in my district, we heard reports that some San Gabriel Valley restaurants saw their revenues decline by around 50% and were forced to close their doors back in February. And as the virus began to spread across the nation, we saw more and more businesses forced to shut down. That's why in January, Congress extended the Economic Injury Disaster Loan Program, the EIDL program, to cover businesses hurt by the pandemic. And later that month, we established the new Paycheck Protection Program to keep employees paid. We also passed EIDL emergency advance grants to give businesses a quick infusion of working capital. But these programs can only work if small business owners receive the guidance and assistance they need. And this must include translated information, which is especially important because the Census Bureau estimates that there are 26.5 million individuals who are limited English proficient in the US, and that includes many small business owners. That's why I authored legislation to provide SBA with $25 million to translate COVID materials and resources into the 10 most commonly spoken non-English languages, specifically including 7 Asian languages. And I'm pleased that the administration has steadily added new translator resources to its website to ensure that LEP business owners can find the information they need to get this much needed relief. Of course, these resources are only part of the equation. As we saw with the rash of applications for the Paycheck Protection Program, minority-owned businesses frequently lost out to bigger firms who have relationships with big banks, even though Congress specifically stated that the program should prioritize underserved communities. That's why last week I introduced bipartisan legislation to authorize the Community Advantage Loan Program. This SBA program has operated as a pilot for nearly 10 years and has a proven record of delivering capital to underserved businesses. Not only has this been helpful at helping these businesses access loans, but it also helps by providing technical assistance and training for lenders so that they can better serve these markets. Now, as we are in the midst of a pandemic that has shuttered our economy, we must make sure that these business loans are as accessible as ever. So every business, not just those with the right relationships, can survive this crisis. And that means the Community Advantage Program can play a crucial role ensuring that no small business is left behind. My legislation will finally elevate this program from a pilot to one of SBA's core lending programs, and it would extend the program to socially disadvantaged small businesses, including those owned by women and people of color. Programs like this are so important for extending access to capital to the communities that have historically been underserved by traditional lenders. We are facing a long and challenging recovery once we defeat this virus, and Community Advantage can play a big part ensuring that no small business is left behind. In the months and years ahead, we know that the contribution of women of color will be vital to growing our economy, creating new jobs, and supporting our communities as we emerge from this crisis. I know you'll be hearing from incredible women leaders, including keynote speaker Tracey, who serves as the CFO of Toyota Motor North America, as well as a great group of panelists, including our very own California State Treasurer, Fiona. And so as you continue in your careers, I encourage all of you to take the risk in the business world because we need more successful women of color in positions of power to move our nation forward. So thank you again to all of you for taking part in today's event to give small businesses the best chance possible to survive this crisis. And I want you to know that I am fighting with you. I will continue to do my part in Congress, and I look forward to working together as we overcome these unprecedented challenges.
Congresswoman Chu, thank you so much for your leadership and also your informative and inspiring remarks. Thank you, thank you. We know how busy you are.
Thank you.
Thank you. So before I introduce our keynote speaker, I also want to thank MBDA, Minority Business Development Agency, Enterprise Women of Color team. They have been helping us to put this event together too. Thank you so much. And now, please, I want to welcome my good friend and Chief Financial Officer and Group Vice President for Toyota Motor North America, Ms. Tracey Doi. Tracey is an active board member of 2020 Women on Boards, the National ACE, and also the Japanese American National Museum. She enjoys supporting the Toyota Business Partner Group with their many team members, development and community initiative, as well as affiliate with Texas Women's Foundation. Tracey has been recognized consecutive times by Automotive News as one of the top 100 women in the automotive industry. And Tracey, you know, she has been recognized and honored by Leadership Education for Asian Pacific LEAP as the recipient of the 2020 Margaret Asher Leadership Award. Tracey has amazing background and also amazing achievement. But the most importantly, she's always giving back to the community. Now, ladies and gentlemen, Please join me to welcome Tracey Doy.
Thank you, Shalene. Really appreciate the kind introduction. And I want to give a shout out to Pat for inviting me to participate in today's Minority Women Lead. It's such an exciting event, and I really congratulate the team for nimbly pivoting to be able to continue this conversation, even if we're virtual. What an inspiring way to start with Congresswoman Judy Chu's remarks. I think while this is certainly an unprecedented time, it's certainly a great opportunity for women to stand out in their leadership roles. What I thought I might do today is give you a few reflections and inspirations. I just recently celebrated my 20th year at Toyota. Time has definitely flown by. And maybe some of these comments will resonate with you, or perhaps they may be things that you can consider for your team as you navigate through this crisis. So first, if I could introduce myself, maybe just to give you a little bit of background, if we could move forward. So I'm fourth generation Japanese American, grew up in the South Bay, California. I've been fortunate enough to have a number of different roles in healthcare, entertainment, footwear, AT&T Wireless, and then Toyota. I really try to keep my family first, but I do work hard, and I also have a lot of fun. One of the ways that I do enjoy is volunteering as a family, as well as with Toyota. If we can go to the next slide. You know, there's a lot of things that I wish I had known earlier in my career, and so I'd love to be able to share a few of those items so that maybe you could do some own reflection and maybe not do the mistakes that I have made. First and foremost is really just delivering consistent quality results. And I think that all of us know that it's important to build a strong foundation of expertise, but I'd also highlight that it's important to continue to grow and learn. And that might be reading. I read a lot, Wall Street Journal, CFO Magazine, Automotive News, and on leadership, Harvard Business Review. It could also, in this virtual environment, take webinars like this program, and of course, learning on the job. Something that I didn't recognize, though, is that we talk a lot about brands of companies, and Toyota spends a lot of effort making sure that our customers know us and that we groom and cherish our brand as someone that stays focused on servicing our customers' needs. But recognize that you have a personal brand. And if you're not sure exactly what your brand stands for, you might ask a good friend, a colleague, if they could describe you in 3 words. And they may say, you're a great problem solver, you're a team player, you always get the job done. But is there something in that description that you wish that they would have added? That they might have said, oh, she's a great strategist, she's a great team leader, she's not a follower. Self-promotion is not easy. It's not a natural tendency, certainly for Asians, and maybe not for women. But I think that there are subtle ways where you can let your leader know about your contributions. Just be really well prepared for your one-on-one or in your staff meeting. And you can always share a highlight of a project that you're super excited about in an email. There are ways to do cultivation of your brand without overstepping what's comfortable for you. Another area where I would say I would spend more effort earlier in my career is focusing on strengthening communication and negotiation skills. Really important to be able to have clear, written, and verbal communication. Know who your audience is. Be able to tell a story as to why the project that you are pitching is so important and will be helpful to the individual that you are asking for approval. This takes a lot of practice and practice multiple times. The other thing I'd comment is that when you're talking about negotiations, I used to think of negotiations as only for attorneys or for the procurement officer. really recognize that every time you step into a meeting, you're negotiating. You're asking for something, funding, resources. It's okay to be assertive in a way that is comfortable for you. I have found that practicing leadership skills is easier when it's done in a safe environment. And so volunteering is an easy way to practice leadership. I started off by serving on the March of Dimes board, volunteering right after our beautiful son was born. Of course, I'd like to think that that picture of him, most beautiful baby in the world. But when someone asked me to volunteer and lead, of course, initially as a financial person. But as time went on, I grew more confident in fundraising and in marketing, and maybe a little bit more on the strategy side. So I would encourage you, whether it be volunteering for Cal Asian or for National ACE or for your employee resource group, school, or church, there's a lot of ways to give back, and you will grow and flourish at the same time that you're doing good. Next, I'd say, surround yourself with talent. I didn't think of it in this term. Our University of Toyota coined the term, surround yourself with a personal board of directors. These could be family and friends that you trust, my husband, my mom. It could be best girlfriends, parents with children that are older than your own so that they can help you navigate through the next stage, entering college, developing to graduate to the high school level. And on the professional front, I think a personal board helps fill in gaps in knowledge, areas where you may not have as much expertise. I'll give you an example. When I first joined Toyota, Dave Ellingworth, who is known as the father of Lexus, was my boss, and he was kind enough to put me under his wing and help me navigate beyond understanding the financials, what it takes to drive production, plan for our sales team, help support our dealers and our customers. And now that I have responsibility for the finance area of our 14 manufacturing plants, I need a lot more expertise in manufacturing. So I'm fortunate to work closely with our SVP, Norm Buffuno, who's really helped me along the way. And of course, in the community, dear friends that have been supportive in all the organizations that I volunteer in. The other comment I'd have is that be aware of stereotypes. When people see your face, they make assumptions. Unconscious bias, we've been talking about that more. Sometimes it can be really positive. Asians are known to be hard workers, to be dependable. But sometimes they are also considered individuals that don't make a lot of noise, that don't disrupt, and may not be considered a strong leader or someone that can navigate politics well. I just encourage you to think about leaning in a style that is comfortable for you. I personally don't like confrontation, but I find that by developing relationships in advance, that I can get my point across, even if it's a tough conversation, because I've built that trusted relationship. You know, on conversations in a meeting, have you ever found that meetings tend to be led by the extroverts? Sometimes those that are the loudest voice. And sometimes it can be hard to speak up, to share your perspective. I just encourage you to be well prepared. Do your research ahead of time, write down questions in advance, be part of the wrap up of the meeting where you've got a few memorable takeaways, and be the one that volunteers to answer the Q&A because you know the answers. And the advantage in this virtual world is there are a lot of people who don't turn on their camera. I encourage you, turn on your camera, be visible, and you'll be memorable. I talked about building trusted relationships. You know, you're going to hear in this next segment of this great panel talking about the value of mentorship. I also would encourage you to think about the fact that you want to earn sponsorship, those that are going to advocate for you, and build allies at all levels across the organization, both men and women, not just people that look like you, individuals that really can be supportive. And like I said, round out your background and your experience beyond the area that you focus on. And that could be both inside and outside the company. For me, I've really been fortunate that I've been able to gain insights and inspirations from more than one mentor throughout my career. And I wanted to share with you insight from a lot of different great leaders that I admire. So on this next slide, these are friends, colleagues that I trust, that I have grown close to through years of volunteering with National ACE, the Japanese American National Museum, US-Japan Council, Orchid Giving Circle, TASIA, which is our internal Asian ERG, and in Dallas, an Asian Executive Network. I'm going to give this to you. We're going to send this to you. They've all shared their insight of what they wish they had learned earlier in their career, and I hope you find it helpful. I'd also encourage you to think about stretching strategically. Take those courageous risks, because if you don't stretch, it's hard to progress. And that could be true within your own business, or that could be true within a corporation. I would just say, don't do it by yourself. Ask for help. I've certainly found that if you do a project, call it a pilot, people are more forgiving because you're saying, I'm trying an experiment and I need some assistance. What do you think? Can you give me update? Can I give you updates at key milestones and ask for your feedback? And then you're going to be much more confident and be able to lead because you've already practiced in this safe environment. And then as you move forward, acknowledge the fact that it may not be perfect. Doesn't need to be perfect. Don't beat yourself up if you make a mistake. Just reflect and learn from that experience. And I'd also say, really stay true to your values. For me, it's trying to keep my family first in the center. I love my team. I love spending time with them as a group, individually, in small breakouts. The young professionals are in the top left, and they sponsored an innovation fair, a contest across the whole company called the Tank. There's Mark Cuban right in the middle. And the Orchid Giving Circle, my sisters that I really volunteer with to help serve the Asian community. And on the right-hand bottom, I'm with Millie Marshall, one of our presidents of our plants, learning about manufacturing on the plant floor. And if you stay true to your values and follow your passion, I'm confident on the next slide that as you learn and develop, that you're going to rise, whether it be within your own company, within your own business. As you grow and develop, I really encourage you to take those risks and continue to be successful because we need you during this pandemic, during this crisis, and as we move forward in a time of innovation. So with that, I will hand it back over to Pat Fong Kushida, our fearless leader of Cal Asian Chamber. Pat?
Tracey, thank you so much. This was such an inspirational keynote, and I love the fact that you actually had a lot of fun with it as well. I have a couple questions for you.
Sure.
And that is, first of all, what's your favorite kind of noodle?
Oh, ramen. I like that better than udon.
And, I was really struck when you said that you really need to nurture your personal brand. And when I think of you, there's 3 words that come to mind. And instantly, I didn't even hesitate. The first word that came to mind for me was integrity.
Oh,
integrity. The second word that came to mind is that you're very strategic. And the last word that came to mind was the commitment. You're so committed And it shows through in terms of your family, in terms of the volunteer work that you do, but also just how you lead your team.
Oh, thank you.
So
I obviously do what I love though, Pat, right? We all do
Yeah.
our best when we're doing what we love. So thank you.
So I'm going to ask you, if you had 3 words to describe your personal brand, what would that be, Tracey?
I would say family. I would say nurturing, maybe, and hopefully a maximizer, really trying to help lift others. Because I've reached a point in my career where I really want to try to lift the next generation and help them do their best.
Well, thank you. This has been such a wonderful, wonderful sharing moment. And we probably got about close to 150 folks on the call. And I'm sure a lot of those folks are just starting their careers. So we encourage you, and thank you for sharing also your network. We're all going to take advantage of that. So thanks, Tracey.
They've got some great takeaways. So I encourage you to read through. Thanks,
Thank you
Pat.
so much.
Thanks for having me a part of this.
Absolutely. So throughout the month of August, we'll be featuring more folks like Tracey. So please, you need to join with us and make sure that you get the full list of conversations, and you can access those on minoritywomenlead.com. And so it's just a really great way to be able to be connected throughout the month of August. So thank you. And thank you again, Tracey, for your leadership. And now it's my honor, my great honor, to introduce our first conversation, Women Led, the Power of Mentorship. And to kick off the conversation is our moderator, Cassandra Pye, who's Executive Vice President and Chief Strategy Officer for Lucas Public Affairs, and just a dear friend of mine, Cassandra. So thank you so much for agreeing to moderate the panel today. So Cassandra's had over 35 years of experience in communications, government, politics, and advocacy. She was appointed Deputy Chief of Staff to California Governor Arnold Schwarzenegger and was the Vice President and Political Director for the California Chamber of Commerce. Today, Cassandra is an experienced executive coach and facilitator and serves as Executive Vice President and Chief Strategy Officer for Lucas Public Affairs, leading strategic communications and public affairs campaigns for their clients. So ladies and gentlemen, please welcome my good friend, Cassandra Pye.
Good morning, Pat. How are you?
Good.
Good. Thank you so much for the introduction. I am here with not just some very distinguished panelists, but women who are also, I'm happy and proud to say, very, very good friends of mine. That includes our phenomenal State Treasurer, Fiona Ma. She's waving. Margita Thompson. There she is. And I understand that Mona Pascal-Rogers from Facebook is going to be on with us, but maybe having some technical issues at the moment. So I'm going to go and just do a quick introduction on both of our panelists, and I'll go ahead and introduce Mona as well so you'll know who's with us. And all 3 of these ladies have resumes and bios that are literally 4 pages long in some cases because they've got so much experience, which is why they're here with me. So I'm just going to call out a couple of highlights if that's okay. Fiona is a certified public accountant who is currently serving, fortunately for us, as our California State Treasurer. She's been in this role since January 2019. She was elected with more votes than any other candidate for treasurer in the state's history. Prior to that, she served as a member of the California Board of Equalization, which is essentially our tax collection agency for businesses. And she served, which is where I met her, in the California State Assembly, as well as on the San Francisco Board of Supervisors. She served on the Board of Supervisors in the early 2000s, from 2002 to 2006. She literally, she's still a member of the Democratic Party, no surprise there, but was the first Asian American woman to serve as Speaker Pro Tem, which is essentially the 2nd highest ranking office in the state assembly. And what I can also tell you, because I know this to be true, is Fiona is strategic. If I think about her brand, she's strategic. She's really, really flexible, but she's also a lot of fun. And we'll talk about that in a little bit. Does that sound like a fair introduction, Fiona? Good. Okay. Just making sure. All right. I see Mona's on now. I'm so happy to see that. So Mona leads the California Public Policy Unit for a little company called Facebook. She has served as appointment secretary in the offices of both Governor Jerry Brown, as well as our current governor, Gavin Newsom. She also served as chief of staff to California Lieutenant Governor John Garamendi, and she was actually acting governor after Garamendi was elected to Congress. This is the first time, it was the first time a woman, an API or Filipino American, had served as Lieutenant Governor of California, and it was quite an achievement at the time. And I've heard several women say that Mona's role, particularly there, served to motivate them to want to run for office and get more engaged in state politics. So we are grateful to Mona for that. She's a veteran political advisor, and she's a strategist. She has directed presidential, gubernatorial, and many local political campaigns across the nation. So Mona, it is wonderful to see you. Did I get it right? My 3 words for Mona would be family, would be friendship, and would be food. We share that. So last but not least, I'm not going to let you guys tell me what your words are for me. Last but not least, it's really a pleasure to introduce my friend Margita Thompson. She is Vice President of Public Affairs for California Resources Corporation. It's the state's largest independent oil and natural gas producer. Prior to this role, she was actually at Disney, Vice President for External Communications for Disney Consumer Products. So she led the PR teams for Disney Publishing, Disney Stores, Disney Licensing, the world's largest licensor. Prior to that, she actually worked in state government, and I had the honor of working with her. She was press secretary for California Governor Arnold Schwarzenegger. And her bio says that in that role, she managed a global media onslaught. And let me reinforce that. It was a global media onslaught that was literally the equivalent of a startup for what was then the 6th largest economy in the world. It was absolutely remarkable. What I love about Margita is her, well, I'm going to give her my 3 words. Really smart, that's 2 words, strategic, and I still have to go back to family. Very important to Margita. So it's an honor to be with the 3 of you. Again, count you all as friends more than anything else. And let's get right into this conversation. I know a little bit about all of your careers and where they started, and I know a teeny bit, probably in every case, about who mentored you. So I'm going to start with Fiona. We've had this conversation a couple times. I like to say to folks that even though I'm a woman of color, my mentors have been primarily white men. And particularly my champions. I could, tick them off, all responsible for me making big leaps in my career and getting opportunities that I know I would not have gotten otherwise. So Fiona, let's talk first about who your most important mentors were, and then tell me why.
Yeah, so my most important mentor was my first boss in politics, Senator John Burton. Back when I first moved here to California, I started out with Ernst & Whinney as a CPA in the real estate tax group, stayed 5 years, then left and started my own practice. And that was when I got very involved with small businesses, understanding that they are the backbone of our economy, yet so difficult to run a small business, I think anywhere in the world, especially here in California. And then I started networking, and I became the president of the Asian Business Association, and where I really started to get more involved advocating for MWE business owners at the contracting level, at the state, at the local level, at the federal level, and got involved in Democratic Party politics started volunteering, got involved in all the different clubs, especially women's organizations. And one particular one, the Chinese American Democratic Club, there were two people that were there, Jim Wakab and Linda Post. Yes, at the Chinese American Democratic Club, one of the founders under John's brother, and said, hey, you know, John Burton's looking for an aide. You should apply. And I said, why would he hire me? I came from New York. I don't speak a lot of Chinese, if that's what he's looking for. I have no idea about California politics. You know, I just started getting involved. And I went and I had an interview with the chief of staff, and I said exactly that. And then she said, well, I'd like you to meet John Burton. And so I met John, and he came running in. I'll just give you a little anecdote since we're amongst friends. He comes running in, and I'm sitting there in the restroom, and he like runs past me. He goes just like cussing, you know, shit, blah, blah, blah. And I go, okay, like what's going on? And then he came back a couple minutes later, and I found out he left his wallet in the bathroom. So he was freaked out. So he basically, you know, said, come on in. And I said, exactly, I don't know why you would hire me, but, you know, I'm willing to learn and I'm very interested. And he hired me because I found out that I did not have any allegiances to anybody else in politics. And that is kind of sometimes important, you know, when you hire other people who have worked for someone else, all of a sudden you're like, well, where is that person? Oh, that person is, you know, staffing, you know, this former member or whatever, their former boss, because I know now, once you're a staffer, you are always a staffer, right? But John Burton clearly was my biggest mentor. I wouldn't be here if he had not hired me. He taught me three important things. One is to be loyal. He always says, remember who brought you to the dance, darling. Number two, be a voice for those who don't have a voice. And three, stand up for what you believe in, even if you are standing by yourself. And so those are three very important lessons that I've learned today, and it suited me very well. And so I would say he is the biggest mentor in my life, and then political life. And then the second one is Mike Honda. Many of you know Mike Honda. He is an amazing individual, would come and fly back from Washington, D.C. And stand with me at a meeting when I ran for my first race in the San Francisco Board of Supervisors, and still is one of my favorite people in this world. So those two people, I think, most influenced me to this day and helped me grow to be who I am.
Great, good lessons. So let me just say three things, ladies. You never know. Fiona said she wasn't sure why she'd get hired, and she went in for the interview anyway. So never give up an opportunity, never say no to an opportunity. And I love this advice. Remember who brought you to the dance, be a voice for those who don't have a voice, and stand up for what you believe in. That's great. Thank you, Fiona. Mona, who is your greatest mentor?
Hey, ladies. My greatest mentor is Maylee Tom. Maylee was the woman who, when I was just graduating from college and my mother said, you need a job and you need to go over to Maylee Tom's office and you need to ask her to be your mentor. I'm not going to say how many years ago that was, because it was quite a few years ago, but I'll tell you that every step of my professional career and then really my personal career, she had a place in it. She was always the one in the one that I knew was in my corner, aside from my parents, but she was also someone who would give it to me real. You know, she has that way to kind of move her head to the side to say, that's kind of a great idea, but have you thought about this? And I think as we are moving up our political and through our careers or political goals, it's always good to have somebody like Maylee Tom who will give it to you straight. Yeah. I think that she and Nancy McFadden really helped me with find my security and find, they would say, be brave, and then kind of throw me into a situation. I'm like, are you going to come with me? No. Mignon Moore, who, when I worked in Washington, D.C., really helped me find my voice and helped me understand, if you want to do something, you got to work hard and you have to step up. We're here, but you've got to stand up and you have to speak up. All three of those ladies are phenomenal people who have gifted me with grace and really taught me to be brave. I think that there are many times when we are embarking on a new adventure and we're not sure, we're a little bit scared, but you always have to have the voice or someone next to you, behind you, pushing you along to say, guess what? You can do this, and we're here for you.
You know, Mona, it's interesting. There was a woman, I'll say her name, Beth Rogers. Her name may be familiar to a couple of you, but she was a businesswoman, wealthy, white, LA businesswoman who was on the California Chamber Board of Directors when I was political director there. And she's 10 years older than me. She's exactly 10 years older than me. And so Beth used to say for me, every bad step I make and every bad decision I make, I'm going to share with you so you don't make it. And I'm going to be really honest with you about it so you don't make it. And she was one of those people that helped me kind of figure out the balancing motherhood piece. A mom of 4. I worked from outside the home from the time my youngest was 3. And Beth was one of those women who would just give me literally little pointers to make some things work, like homework. I had Mimi Walters, who was a member of Congress for a while and in the Assembly, I think with you, Fiona, who told me to hire someone just to help me fold the laundry. And it was literally life-changing. I was in the governor's office. I came home to piles of laundry every night. It made me crazy. And something as simple as, well, Cassandra, pay somebody to fold the laundry. It saved my life, saved my marriage, and it saved the life of my kids. So there's that. So what I heard Mona say is you need some women behind you to remind you to stand up and speak up and to be brave. And in my case, to learn how to manage laundry. Margita, talk about who inspired you. Who was your greatest mentor and what did they offer you in the way of advice?
Thank you, Cassandra, and thank you so much for asking me to be on this panel with this group. So excited to be here. And first of all, just a little bit more background about me is I grew up on the border, 50-50 in San Diego and Tijuana. And so I so understand the importance of something like the Asian Pacific Islander Chamber of Commerce, because it's this ability to be able to navigate between cultures, which is such an important competitive advantage for us. And it's doing it without judgment. It's just different, right? Things come ahead different, but we have that commonality. Cassandra mentioned it, that importance of family. Yes. So the reason I bring that up is that when you're developing a mentor relationship, the first thing is you have to click with that person, and it has to be a little bit of who you are. Now, it doesn't mean it has to be someone like you, but I would say the person that's had the most longevity in benefiting my career is a woman named Pat Clary. And Pat Clary may be someone that's known to many of you. What's interesting about Pat is that even though she's someone who works on the Republican side of the aisle, she just had a birthday, and the 2 men who called her were Arnold Schwarzenegger and John Burton. It really goes to highlight the importance of being able to develop relationships across the aisle. Yes. And to be able to have people that are looking out for you that are different than you are. And I know that I've really taken that to heart. And so a lot of times when people are talking about diversity issues that matter, it's like, well, I support women, but I really support Democratic women. Or I support Latinos, but I really support Latinos that are working family Latinos. And you kind of differentiate what it is. And really, it's about how do you embrace this model of diversity broadly? And that's really what Pat kind of brought to my sensibility, which was that you really need to surprise people and build unexpected relationships, because that's how you're going to make progress. And that couldn't be more true than in a time like today. Mm-hmm. She's tough. She definitely taught me to be tough and to boss up and be able to take very direct feedback. She was someone who was in my life right when I came out of college, and then she ended up becoming Arnold Schwarzenegger's chief of staff. And she ended up recruiting me to be press secretary. I was really lucky. I had a great job in Washington, D.C., where I was political producer for Larry King Live, working at CNN. Super fun. And she was like, come on, interview for this job. And I was like, I've done so many cross-country trips. I was living in Washington, D.C., but she really encouraged me to take this job. And it was the job of a lifetime to be press secretary for someone like Governor Schwarzenegger. And it really is getting a PhD in state politics and California politics. And so the other thing that I learned from Pat is trying to be as cool as a cucumber under intense scrutiny. And this whole concept that I think is really important, fake it till you make it. And having someone that you can feel comfortable being vulnerable around. And I'll be honest with you, it wasn't always Pat that I could be vulnerable around. So you definitely need to expand your network, but putting yourself out there, and eventually you are able to become the person that you aspire to be.
Margita, that's absolutely brilliant. And obviously I knew Pat very well and had some very tough moments in the role that I served in the governor's office, and still remember the day that Pat came into my office, closed the door, and said to me, I know how hard you're working. I know what it is that you do and what you add to this team every day. And I want you to know that I appreciate it. And it got me through, I will say, probably one of the most challenging days of my career, and certainly my time inside that space. So what I would say, where I would say I couldn't agree with you more, is Pat and I also weren't a lot alike. In fact, we, not just physically or racially, we just came from very, very big different backgrounds. But I did feel like Pat looked out for us. I loved what you said. Your mentor doesn't have to be like you, but it has to be somebody who will look out for you. Mm-hmm. And I think that's absolutely true. And it's a great transition to this next question. Who do you all look out for? Tell me a little bit, each of you, about one or more of your mentees, and what that relationship is like, and what value or what great lessons you've imparted. And I'll go out of order now and ask you first, Mona.
Gosh, I feel like Mama Mona sometimes, and I look out for a lot of mentees. It could be the high school student who called me a few years ago, who I happened to meet at USC at a conference, just to check and say, how did the student elections go that you're interested in? I check in a lot, especially today, with my sisters who are just starting off and just graduated from college and are looking for jobs. It's a tough time. The transition has been tough, and I really feel the importance of really helping people, but especially those who are just trying to start off or in these transition periods. A few have lost their jobs. Yeah. And how do you help people who are in a tough place? How do you reassure them? And sometimes it's me talking to them. It's sometimes me connecting them to someone. Good. Because I think that's the gift that we can give as mentors is, broadening, using all these great relationships that we have and sharing them. And so that's been, there have been a couple calls that I've been on recently who have said, well, that's really nice, but I'm actually interested in meeting so-and-so. And I'm like, that's great. And so that's when it's a great relationship. But I think in these times, it's especially those who are really feeling what's my next step? And then of course, those who are our contemporaries, our girlfriends who we've worked with and have been, that we've known for years, just checking on them to say, hey, how you doing? Could be a little text at about 11 o'clock at night, just to check, and just because they popped up in my mind. Yeah. And I'm smiling at you, Cassandra.
I've gotten a couple of those. I've gotten a couple of those from you. Thank you very much. And sent a few myself. She's absolutely right. I think your point about connecting people and really, I think this most important point, we've been around for a while. So sharing our relationships is something we can't take for granted. It's such a big deal. I talk to mentees sometimes and they will say, I'll say, well, I could connect you with Fiona Ma. And they'll go, Fiona Ma? Yeah. Done a little karaoke with her. How about that? So never underestimate the value of the relationships you have. It's huge. And just, you know, what I say is it doesn't take a lot of time, and it can't take a lot of time at this stage in my career I can't do an hour often anymore with someone who's a mentee, but I can take the 10 minutes that it takes to write an email and make a connection and say to them, I'm teeing this up and I'm going to let you take it from here. That's invaluable. So thank you for that, Mona. Margita, what do you do in this area?
Well, I have to present to a committee of our board tomorrow. And so I was doing a retrospective on identifying trends and wanted to talk about what's been going on more broadly with the racial issues happening in society. And so I wanted to look to see who I had championed for leadership development training and had sent. And what I realized is that every single person I had sent to leadership training was a woman. I hadn't sponsored any, and it was conscious / unconscious. I don't think I had realized that I had gone to that end. But I'm okay with it, and I'm proud of it, and I'm going to tout it when I end up talking to the board, even though it's a board that's mainly made up of men, right? And so part of it is being confident in who you're championing, and the other is being confident in making other people uncomfortable and having that be okay. The other person that I'm mentoring is a woman who's running for county supervisor in San Diego, who's on a board that we all share, Nora Vargas. And Nora is running, she's a big Democrat advocate activist. I'm Republican still.
Me too.
Reagan Republican, different Republican. And she, but I'm championing her, and I want to do what I can to help get her elected. Number one, she listens, and she's willing to listen to people who disagree with her. As long as that's the threshold, I'm going to be supportive of women and diverse women, Latinas, Asian Pacific Islander, Black, whoever I can, that's going to be open to having a diverse point of view. And what I enjoy about things, like one of the words that I like using about myself for my brand is unexpected. And I really want to be that unexpected champion that's going to be able to have these relationships, so that in the future, if someone's like, I'm thinking of running for office, who is it that I could talk to? I can be like, you know what, I can connect you with Nora. And so those are the sort of things that I champion.
I think that's really important. And I appreciate that, Margita. I led an implicit bias training this morning for St. Hope Academy, which is a charter school up here in Sacramento. About 95 people were on the line this morning. And one of the things we talked about is cancel culture. And we talked about comfortable, being comfortable challenging people in an environment when maybe 95% of the people aren't like you or don't share your point of view. I gave them a little bit of my experience as also someone who's still a Republican. I think it is so important in the short term, to your point, as you say, be comfortable with making people uncomfortable, be comfortable with making people uncomfortable, but also be open to championing people, regardless of party, race, any of those things, if they're willing to listen to a diverse point of view. I'll tell you how it's paid off for me in my career. This is a very, very blue state, and I'm a very, very red Republican. And yet I have friends in the capacity to make connections for my mentees with people regardless of what party they sit in. One of my biggest lines of advice to anyone, including my own children, is never burn a bridge.
Yeah.
Never burn a bridge, particularly for a reason as silly as whether or not someone's got a D or an R behind their names. People are people. Fiona. Speaking of one of my best Democratic friends.
Okay, ladies, you know how when you're at a hotel and they're like, you have 5 minutes on the computer and you're gonna get logged off or you're gonna get charged. Well, I've got 6 minutes and 35 seconds before this computer starts automatically. So I have one of my mentees here, Michelle. She's so awesome. She's gonna start me up on another laptop, so you probably will see me disappear and then we're gonna get back on. But, you know, Cassandra, I want to say your 3 words that I have for you:
Oh,
positive, supportive, and cool. And I also want to, since you brought up the laundry thing, I did the laundry, and I'm the same way. I just leave it in, you know, I pick out whatever I want, whatever I need, my sweats and my dress, and I leave it. And I figured out it's because socks. I can't stand when socks are mismatched. What do you do with mismatched socks? So I just leave it in there, you know? Anyway, that's my laundry story. So, you know, Mona may be like Mama Mona, but my last name is horse, Ma. It means horse. It is Ma. I don't have kids of my own, and so I have probably had about 1,500 interns come through my office, and so I call them my Ma Squad, and they still come back in my life. You know, some of them are interning again this summer. One has run for office and has asked me to mentor him. And just along the way, you know, when they, you know, don't know where to go or what they should major in, or they need a job, you know, could we help? So I'm like all of you, I step in whenever I can. I always encourage folks to keep in touch with me. And then secondarily, like my staff, when I was in the assembly, I was always baffled that some members did not treat their staff well. And for me, I treat my staff better than I do my husband or my father, because they are always going to be in my life. But you just never know about your staff, right? Whether they're going to, like, you know, sue you or call the newspapers. I mean, you should always treat your staff better than you do your family. And then third, like Margita, I really endorse and support women who are running for office. I know how tough it is to be in these positions, how we're judged. This is my 4th elected office, and I still get the same thing. Like someone just said, oh, well, you know, your reputation is like you're a lightweight. I'm like, a lightweight? Why? Because I like to have fun, right? I mean, so it's like these, you know, these conflicting, like I get a lot done, and I can go into all the things that I've gotten done, like bringing Virgin trains to California. That is my project. I'm very quiet about it, but I believe in just doing the work quietly, making sure we're moving forward. I don't need to like shout it out the top of the mountains, but that's some of the stuff that, you know, as women running for office, we face all the time. And so I try to support women, people of color, and especially like young people, right? A lot of millennials want to run for office, and millennials think they know everything. And then they run for office and they lose, you know, badly because they thought they knew everything. And so trying to also mentor the millennials who are running for office, because they are our next generation. They're much different than all of us. They have different attitudes. They're always about can do, nothing stops them, but they also need to be a little bit trained as they are moving through their political career. So I will join you in a minute. I'm gonna change computers.
okay.
I will be back.
I'll look for you.
Thank you.
So that was a really important point that Fiona just made about this next generation. I'll be really honest with now both of you, but also with everybody on the line. I think probably the one thing I struggled with and learned the most about in these 6-8 weeks since George Floyd's murder is leaning in and listening and acknowledging and bringing into the mix those voices of that next generation. And it's not that I wasn't inclined to do it. I have young, you know, I have children aged 24 to 31. And I did a lot of engaging with them, but on my own team at LPA, they leaned in and said, we need to hear more from you. We need you to listen. We need you to acknowledge our point of view and that it may be different. We're thinking about this in a different way than you are. It's been, and I was grateful, to be really honest about that, just grateful to be in this time and in this moment working with a very talented group of people who also said, we're leaning into. Had a consultant that said to me, if you're in any kind of business, small business, large business, anything at all, and you aren't listening to the young people on your team, you're making a huge mistake. That's my ridiculously bad segue into my next question. to both of you, and that is to think back to your 22-year-old self. You even remember her? And Mona doesn't. I barely do. How either did you or how would you, if you were on the younger end of this conversation of the women on this line, how would you go about asking someone to mentor you? And I'll start with you, Margita.
Well, Cassandra, first of all, I think you touched on a really important point in that I could be a mentee and I should have someone much younger being my mentor. So there, you always need a mentor, and there's a lot that we can learn from this younger generation that is so prominent and passionate. And so there's this concept of reciprocity. So when you're developing and thinking about developing a relationship with a mentor, think about it in terms of the fact that you have value to add to that relationship as well. And so it doesn't have to be purely one way. The other thing I would do would be to start trying to identify what is it that you're interested in and what is it that you want to do. Like I saw in one of the Q&As that was already in there, there's a woman who's in law school and she's a little bit sad about what the job prospects are once she graduates. And I would say, I think it's Facebook, Mona, that has this, I have a friend who works in HR at Facebook, and one of the questions they ask is, what are you doing when you lose track of time? And so think about what it is that you're doing when you lose track of time. That's where your inner self, your passion is going. And start thinking about if it's an issue, like for me, it used to be politics. It is not now, but it used to be. And so it would be like, well, who can I reach out to that's got some sort of connections or area of expertise? And how is it that I can even just do an informational interview? As you mentioned, anyone will be willing to do an informational interview, especially if you slot it for like 10 or 15 minutes. People are willing to do that. And then what you do is say, and can you give me the name of someone else that you could refer me to? And so then you kind of start hearing yourself and what your pitch is about yourself. We've been talking a little bit about personal branding. So you have to really have that in a concise way in order to be able to do the outreach. The other thing I would recommend is that anytime you see anyone on a panel like this, reach out on LinkedIn and say, I want to be that person's connection. And don't just do it blankly, like just saying, oh, I'm blankly doing it. Say, I heard you speak on this panel. I was really intrigued by what you said about why. I would very much like to be a connection. And so then if you're starting from scratch, that kind of helps you start building that LinkedIn inventory of contacts. So those are some of the few things.
Excellent. Excellent. Fiona, I see that you're back. I think you are. And the question I asked is relative to what you would tell your 22-year-old self about finding a mentor. And Margita just gave us a couple really good answers. I'm going to switch over to Mona and ask you.
So when I was 20, it was when 2021 was actually when my mom told me to go walk over to the Assembly CAO's office and ask Maylee Tom to be, my mentor. I actually didn't think about it. I didn't think that I was not really fearless because I just was doing exactly what my mother said. Now I don't think I would just do that because I know that they were probably thinking, who the heck is this, kid showing up? But I would say, be fearless, just reach out. There will be people who won't respond. That's okay. Move right along, move. And I'm always really, I feel great. And I'm always a little shocked at just how this next generation is just also fearless. I've had more young people call because I will always give out my personal cell phone number.
Yes, you do.
And they'll call and they'll say, can you spend a few minutes with me? And I really believe in doing that. And so I would say, be fearless and don't worry. If someone doesn't respond, if it's me, please don't email, just text. But move on and use any of us on this panel to help you.
Excellent. That's great. So I'm going to open it up for questions. Fiona, are you back?
I'm back, but I'm using my little iPhone because the second laptop isn't working right. So
It's
can you guys
okay.
hear and see me?
I can see you and hear you.
Okay,
And
great.
so I'm going to ask everybody to start to think of questions and send them in. I've got a really good question from Pat Funkashita. She said, what do you think men do better than women in advancing their careers? They say, this is her question,
Yeah.
men are sponsored and women are mentored. So
Yeah.
what do you think about that statement? What do men do better than we do? I'm gonna lead with you, Fiona.
Yeah. Men, I think we're brought up to support each other, look after each other. And I know when I was in the legislature, for example, I think the maximum donation was $4,600. And my colleagues, my male colleagues from male lobbyists would rack up the $4,600 donations.
Mhm.
Me, they would give me $1,000. They would have to make me come back. So instead of getting upset at them, because that's just not my style, I would just have an event every month. And I would call them and I would say, hey, because they, how, Cassandra, they'd be like, well, you're not in the budget this time, but if you call me back the next time, I'll be like, okay, well, I have another event next month. And then I have another event in June and then in July. So I would eventually get the money, but it took a lot more work. And it still is that way today. Men are used to owning their pocketbook. So cutting a check for right now, I think my max is $7,800 is not a big deal to them. Women do not cut checks for $7,800. Okay. There's one woman in my life that will cut a check for $7,800. And it's just the nature of not only the, the divide in terms of, how much we make, how much we save, how much extra money we have to donate, that all is not usually, in our wheelhouse as women. Women were mostly taught to go volunteer, right? If you believe in something, go out and volunteer. You don't need to get paid. But men from an early stage, they went out and shoveled the lawn, picked up, mowed the lawn, shoveled the driveway. If it's snowing, they went out and got a newspaper route. But we weren't brought up that way. So men, even today, when I meet prominent men and I'll ask them, hey, can you support me for this race or the next race? They'll say, oh, do you know this person? We went to Harvard together. Do you know this person? He's a partner of mine in our firm. Do you know this person? And it's all men. They never say, oh, do you know this woman? She's amazing. She can help you, no problem. So it's just kind of in the culture. And in order to be successful, you have to just figure out everybody in your world, and everybody can be, help you. But it also is a two-way relationship. So you can't value relationships based on money, but it's really about what they bring to your life, what you can bring to their life. And that's very, very different, because my husband sometimes doesn't understand, why certain people are in my life. They'd be like, well, they're not prominent, or they're not, wealthy, or they're not big donors. And I just can't explain it to him anymore, nor do I even try. I just say, honey, you're on a fire. Go do your fire. I will hang out with the people that I want to hang out with, that I like in my life. And that's just kind of how it has to be, because men and women, we just think different. Our relationships are different. The way we view people are different.
I love what you said about this two-way thing too. And Margita said that before you came on the line, just regarding the mentor-mentee relationship. It is two ways. It's not just about what I can impart to you as your mentor. Absolutely, I learned so much from my mentees. Two ways. Totally agree with that, Fiona. Mona, I have a special question for you. I'm going to ask Margita to answer the question that Pat posed, just in terms of, what men do better than women in terms of advancing their careers.
Well, I tell you, this is something that I found when I was appointment secretary for Jerry Brown. So I would tell people all the time, I could have 5 men and 5 women. All are equally qualified for the same job. 4 out of the 5 women would likely say, I'm not sure. I might have to take another class. You might have somebody else that's more qualified. All 5 guys, I'm your guy. And they might not even be as, as qualified as everyone else, but there was just a security in saying, boom, I got this. And one of the things that I think about, and it could be the way they're raised. It could be the way we're raising, boys and girls. And so I always start meetings, especially with women as we're doing trainings. If you've got doubt, go over to the door, leave it on the mat, come in here with confidence. And because I feel like we have to help each other and remind each other that we can do it. But there is this, for 8 years, I saw the same thing. So I think that there is even if they're not necessarily qualified, to my 3 brothers, I love you very much, right? But it's like there's this confidence that my sister and I didn't exactly have, and why. And so I think that as we move along, and I apologize, I've got a 100-pound black lab that just came into the room and he's making a lot of noise.
It's okay.
But to help each other build that confidence, and when our brothers and sisters and our guy friends help us, and let everybody help each other together. But I think that men in my experience have the tendency to just say, boom, I got it.
Yeah, totally agree with that. I have countless stories when I was political director for the Cal Chamber, when that's 7 times that you have to ask a woman to run for office. It's typically even more than that. And you say to the guy, are you comfortable with this? Oh yeah, no big deal. I've been here for 10 minutes, but I got it anyway. Margita.
One of the things that we have to acknowledge is that the struggle is real, right? And so I think that in the wake of George Floyd's murder, we're seeing more conversations acknowledging this institutionalized systems that give some people the feeling that they are unbiased, and yet they are. And one of the ways that it comes out is that I was working at a different company. I had some P&L profit and loss responsibility. I was doing really well. A big job came open. I came up and did a whole plan so showing what the direction would be. So I had proven background, I showed the vision, and yet the person who was making the decision said, I want to hire this outside guy because I'm just more comfortable with him. And so how do we get around this concept of, I just feel more comfortable with this person? Because we're going to feel more comfortable with people who are like us. And this is where I think this next generation is mentoring us, because they're doing it through transparency.
Yes.
And so shining a light, I feel like I'm like Taylor Swift is a mentor and she doesn't even know. Because she sings about and writes about things that are going on in her life in a very transparent way with joy. And so that's what I try to do too, is I bring transparency to it, but not with such negative judgment that people want to shut it down again, but with a joy about, think about what the possibilities are that you could unleash. Now I missed that opportunity at that other company, so I left. And I was damn good at what I was doing at that company. Oh, yeah. They end up missing out, right? Yeah. So when you're thinking about it, not from a political career, but from a corporate career, one of the things that really matters is employee engagement and all of that. And so when you're in companies that don't provide opportunity, you're going to see increasingly a decline in that engagement. So I think employee pressure is one of the things that's really going to help. And I think it's employee pressure from like millennials and Gen Z, as opposed to those of us that are Gen X or older that have been willing to accept this inauthentic power structure, pretending that it's okay. So
I like it.
I don't know if I answered your question, but that was what I was.
I like it a lot. So I've been given the warning. We've got about 2 minutes. I'm going to give you a question to think about while I do a quick summary. And that question is, what's the one piece of advice you'd give, not to your 22-year-old self, because I know pretty much how old all 3 of you are, but to your 32-year-old self. So 10 years into your career, what would you give to yourselves of advice? Let me just quickly sum up what I heard though. And I love this. You never know, so don't say no. Remember who brought you to the dance. Be a voice for those who don't have a voice. Stand up for what you believe in. Stand up and speak up. Be brave. Your mentor doesn't have to be like you. That was from Margita. Have someone looking out for you who isn't like you. Fake it until you make it. We've got a responsibility and ability as mentors to connect people and share our relationships. Check in on your girlfriends. I wish we'd had time to talk about girlfriends, but that's really important, ladies. Be okay with making people uncomfortable. Champion women and diverse women, regardless of party, as long as they're open to a diverse point of view. Be an unexpected champion. Treat your team well. Support women who run for office. There's a lot to learn from the younger generation, and think about mentoring in terms of the value that you can add to a relationship, but also what you'll get from it. Identify what you want to do and reach out to women on LinkedIn or people you see like us on panels like this with specific questions. Be fearless. And if someone doesn't respond, Mona says, move on. Recognize it's going to be more work for women. Men write checks. We don't. Something to think about. Remember, relationships are a two-way street. Start meetings with women and say to them, if you've got doubt, go to the door and leave it on the mat. That was from Mona. Margita says the struggle is real. There's still institutionalized systems at play. That's true. And so it is important that we be transparent, but be important, but also with a joy that's about the possibilities. So that's just great advice from all of you. So one line for each of you. What would you say to your 32-year-old self? I'm going to start with you, Mona.
Don't be afraid if you don't know the answer. You're not going to be a failure if you don't know it. Just get it and come back.
Excellent. Great. And say, I don't know it. I'll get back to you. There you go. Margita, 32-year-old self.
It's a title of a chapter from Sheryl Sandberg's book, Lean In. Your career is more like a jungle gym than a ladder.
Awesome. And Fiona, I will close with you.
Yeah, so Warren Hellman at his funeral, one of his partners said, this is what Warren Hellman believed in. Life is too short to deal with jerks.
Perfect. And on that wonderful note, I am going to turn it over to Pat Fung Kushida to close us out. Ladies, you know how much I love the three of you with all my heart. You show up whenever we ask you to, by text, by phone, sometimes with food. My best to all of you. And Margita, my best to your mom and dad, Mona to our mom, and Fiona to your dad. So take good care. It was great to spend time with you this morning.
Thank you.
Pat, up to you.
Well, let's give it up, ladies. Oh, so impressive. If you hear the applause, if you could hear the applause, ladies, let me just tell you, my one takeaway, and I'm going to tell you, which just is so inspiring. And I think, Margita, you said this, be able to become the person you aspire to be. Be able to become the person you aspire to be. That is such a profound statement. And I know we all struggle with that. I'm still struggling with it. My age, ladies, I still want to be able to be the person that I aspire to be. But I know from the bottom of my heart, all of you ladies are amazing, and you are those women that we all aspire to be. So thank you again. Thank you so much. Thank you. So with that, I wanted to reintroduce my colleague, Shalene Tong, because again, another woman that aspires a lot of folks. And I want to just say this, Shalene, that this has been an amazing journey with you. We could not have done this without you. This is the start of a month-long campaign to get women excited about leading, to showcase women who are influencers and thought leaders and mentors and mentees. So just wanted to say, so excited to be able to partner with you and MBDA on this and ACE. And so I just wanted to say thank you so much and wanted to give you a chance to say a few words before we close out. Oh, you're on mute. Unmute.
Yes. Hey, Pat, thank you so much for your leadership. What a panel. It's incredible. It's every time I engage with Cal Asian, I have learned so much. And this time, thank you so much for all your teamwork to invite all the panelists. They are incredible women. You know, Pat, especially during these challenging times, women feel very, very depressed. You know, we have to deal with family, we have to deal with work, and also, you know, the parents, the kids. It's so stressful. But when I hear about their, you know, their inspiring remarks, I feel, wow, I'm not alone. Those people, they are facing the same challenges and same obstacles. So thank you so much for giving us this opportunity to be a partner. Thank you. And also thank you for all the speakers.
Well, thank you. And if you'll stay on with me, I am going to introduce Ms. Karen Price Ward, who is the Community Outreach and National Strategic Relationships Director for Southwest, who is now going to give some brief remarks and announce the winner for today's program. So Karen, please take it away.
Well, thank you very much. It has been a pleasure to listen in today. So I just want to first say thank you to the National ACE for the opportunity, and to all of the panelists. I learned a great deal from you. And before giving away the Southwest Airlines tickets, I do want to share some important information with you, and that is the Southwest Promise. We want you to know that our top priority has and always will be your well-being when you're flying on Southwest Airlines. We've employed stringent cleaning and physical distancing practices to support the well-being of our employees and our customers. And we're using electrostatic and antimicrobial spray treatments. We're cleaning our aircraft between each flight using a disinfectant with the same grade that's used in hospitals and restaurants. We're also implementing physical distancing measures. We're limiting the number of passengers on board, and we have made the pledge that we will not sell the middle seat at least until October 31st. And we are providing masks to all of our employees. So if you want to learn more about the Southwest Promise and what it means for whenever you are ready to travel, we encourage you to go to southwest.com. Now, without further ado, I'd like to share with you who our lucky winner is today. And just a few instructions. If your name is called, please do go to your chat and make sure you identify yourself, and then you will be contacted following the event. But we do need you to let us know that you are still present. So you must be present in order to win. So if your name is Naomi Nakano Matsumoto, I hope I said that correctly, you are today's winner of a Southwest Airlines round trip ticket.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Karen, for your leadership and for your commitment to this program. Really appreciate the partnership. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you.
All of us and to all of our guests here today, thank you again for joining us. We hope to see you at our next conversation on Thursday. Mark your calendars, August 13th, and it's called Minority Women Leading Through Change. So with that, I want to bid you guys a fond farewell until we see you again on the 13th. Thank you so much and have a wonderful day.
Okay, all right. So let's do women's first. We have a women